Ladies and gentlemen, members of City Council, please attend the call meeting of the City Council to be held in the 6th floor conference room, 801 Crawford Street, 5 p.m. Tuesday, September 23rd, 2014, for the purpose of a public work session. In addition, you may consider a motion to go into closed meeting by order of the mayor. Mr. Cherry?
Here.
Mr. Edmonds? Mr. Meeks? Mr. Moody?
Here.
Ms. Simmons? Ms. Randall?
Here.
Mayor Wright?
Here.
Mr. Rowe?
Thank you, Deborah. Our first item is this resolution that's on your agenda tonight that deals with the floodplain management. We briefed you on this at your last work session and told you that we'd have the resolution on tonight's agenda and a proposed list. The whole strategy and the goal is to reduce our citizens' flood insurance premiums. And I'm going to ask Fred to come up and brief you. This is a continuation of the last briefing of this matter.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, Vice Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, council. As Mr. Rowe indicated, we briefed you on this item at the last work session. If you look, you'll see it's an extremely large group that we're bringing together. And one of the things that we are trying to do this time, this is our third floodplain management plan. The first two were done in-house without the benefit of a consultant, with some citizen input, but this time we wanted to go all out. We wanted to have something that would be the envy of the eastern United States at least. So to do that, we got one of the largest players on the block to help us, and the Army Corps of Engineers placed Portsmouth on their budget list. Congress approved it, and now they are essentially a consultant working for us. So our consultant isn't costing us anything. One of the other things we wanted to do was to have a very diverse cross-section of individuals. Military, commercial, residential, inside, outside, media, everything we could think of across the board, state, federal, state partners, school, PRHA, anybody that had I guess you'd say, a dog in the show. And the idea is to find and create a plan that looks at not only saving dollars, which this is going to do for those people that have flood insurance premiums, but at the same time provide ways in which the citizens of the city of Portsmouth can have ideas and ways to reduce flooding, to be resilient after a flooding event. We've seen a lot of them, and we're trying to find ways to prevent or reduce that flooding exposure. We feel like flooding, sea level rise, the combination will be one of the biggest factors we have to face in the next 50 years. We feel like we've laid
That we is not just the city of Portsmouth, but the whole Hampton Roads region.
And we feel like we've laid a foundation, but now we want to go ahead and start building a program that becomes one that we can build on and be the envy, as I said, of eastern United States. Are there any questions?
Go forth.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. All right. Got an all-star cast here.
You do. And again, it's by what people do and where they live.
That's true.
Good job.
All right.
Okay.
Wanted to brief you, give you an oral report on 1801 Portsmouth Boulevard, the 30-acre tract of land that we bought, and we set up a council tour. Some of you had conflicts, and for those of you that had conflicts and have not seen the property, give me a call and we'll go back out. Like any many commercial or retail openings, there's typically a soft opening, much like the new Kroger Center marketplace will have a soft opening. They want to make sure that everything works, and then they'll come back and have a grand opening. And that's what we'll do with 1801. We bought a piece of property that had been vacant for almost a half a decade. And as you can imagine, when you have vacant structures, there's a lot of cleanup. In fact, That cleanup started Labor Day weekend when Dennis's crew, now get this is a holiday weekend, went out on Saturday and spent the whole day mowing grass and cutting down vegetation. And that went on and on and on, and truckloads of vegetation got taken out. But here's our teammates giving up a holiday weekend, the end of the summer weekend, to go out there to do this work. I have told you about how when we first toured, it is as if someone hit the fire alarm button and said you got to evacuate, and everything from textbooks to personnel files to student files. I mean, things that you would thought would be protected by some type of law were left there. And we had the sheriff really helped us, had 3 crews, Dennis, working a whole week, taking out all sorts of stuff that was left in those buildings. And so our goal was to get it to a point, and as you know, you well know this, we needed the fields first because we have a severe deficit in playing fields. And that's the easiest thing to get done. And so the goal was to get those fields cut, recut, cut. The plan was to treat them with an insecticide. Did we do that, Dennis?
Wasn't a need for it.
Wasn't a need for it. Okay, there wasn't enough parasites out there like ticks to warrant that. But that was part of how we were thinking. And so we started yesterday opening up the fields for practice. And this is a city-wide asset, just like City Park. City Park, right next door to it is Park Manor neighborhood. That's not Park Manor's private neighborhood playground. And it's very unique, and you've expressed this, to find 30 acres of land in an urban city that's only 30 square miles, almost right smack dab in the center of the city. So this very much is a city asset. It's more than just a little pocket park or a neighborhood park. Now, a couple of weeks, months ago, you were approached, even before you closed on the property, to create a citizens committee. And we needed to get to closing, so I didn't really bring this up at that particular point in time. But you have a citizens committee, and that's the Parks and Recreation Commission. And picking up something that Paige has said when we have discussed, meetings between, a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and Council to hear a conditional use permit, you want to be respectful of the Planning Commission in that example. You don't want to create a situation where they feel that they're being disrespected because you're breathing over their shoulder. I would recommend, and I do recommend, that you use the Parks and Recreation Commission. It's appointed by you, it's citywide, and you task them with coming up with a process for civic engagement. There are a lot of ways to do this, but give them the primary responsibility for this. Much like the comprehensive plan, which is taken out into the community, just like the Parks and Recreation Master Plan that was adopted a couple of years back. You can do it with focus groups. You can do it with subcommittees. There could be a committee that's made up, but task them with the process of overseeing the development of the master plan. It's not like we have a sinking ship here. The Titanic is not going to sink if we don't create something special today. We need to dream big. Unfortunately for us, because we miss them, our son and his family moved to Charlottesville in June. This is a little personal story. And now we go to Charlottesville as opposed to bypassing it on 64. And they have a splash park that's not much bigger than the splash park that we've got in Portsmouth, with a lazy river where you get an inner tube and you go around in an oval. So we need to think big. Not everything needs to be done the first month. We'll probably bring the buildings on in this sequence. The gym. The gym, as we've talked about before, was originally used by Frederick Military Academy as their facility for playing their basketball games. And the locker rooms were under the bleachers, the old-fashioned way. And when you go in there, yeah, you can visualize where they hung up their athletic gear, and they're not partitions between the toilets. And then when that building was built, no one was concerned about ADA. So we have to make that building ADA compliant. As you go up the bleachers, you've got to be pretty agile because there's no handrail to go up those concrete steps. But that doesn't mean we can't figure out a way quickly to use that. The next building that most likely will come online will be the classroom building that was used by the former owner. That building is in very good shape, and it needs some cleanup. But if you remember, I told you that they actually put carpet in there at the beginning of the summer. And then the next building, we've already used in the Butler building. There's a Butler building there for storage. The cafeteria needs a roof. The cafeteria, though, is a pretty big building. And on the left-hand side, apparently, is where they had the clinic. In the center is, and that's where we found a lot of personnel records, but those have been destroyed. In the center was the cafeteria with a full-size kitchen. I mean, it is like a cafeteria. They fed 3 meals a day there. And then on the right-hand side, as you're facing the cafeteria with your back to the balance of the property, is a series of rooms. And I can just imagine someone called up and said, we need 3 more office spaces. Okay, I'll send the carpenter around there. You can get little bitty hallways, but they're all temporary walls, and so they can come out. So there's a process as we go through these vacant buildings, but the goal was get it in shape, take down the vegetation, get the fields ready, start doing an assessment of the buildings so that we can use the most usable first, which is the gym, which was the goal anyway, was to try to get that gym available. Again, you may get speakers tonight that say, we need a committee. Well, you got a committee. This is this committee. And my recommendation is that you task them with coming up with the civic engagement process to involve all the citizens of Portsmouth, because this is truly a city asset. That really concludes all that we have. We have council liaison reports.
Let me just comment on this whole parks deal. We have, once again, I think, missed an opportunity to engage citizens and keep everybody engaged on this thing. This thing had much fanfare. We had a numerous amount of people approaching us about this advisory group or whatever you want to call it. I thought it was a great opportunity that we take advantage of that. If you go on social media yesterday and today, we're being blasted for once again ignoring citizens and doing what we want. And they've been online all day talking about how we have ignored the citizens. We've opened up fields, there are kids over there playing, and no one has had any input. And so now you've had members of the Parks and Rec Commission online talking with these other people that feel that we as a council said, yeah, we want to hear from you, but we never did engage them. And if you log on now, they're still talking about it, John. It's been all day and it's been constant. We've got to stop missing these opportunities to engage people. There's nothing wrong with a subgroup or whatever we want to call it. You got to engage them first. You got to make them part of the process, because if they don't come, and we don't get the kids there, we've wasted $4 million. And so we've got to have the whole city behind us. We need anybody that want to participate, whether it's a great idea or not, but we can't ignore them. And right now, they all feel that they've been ignored with the soft opening.
I disagree. I agree 100% with civic engagement. I think that's the hallmark of this city administration, okay? We don't shut down doors. We don't shut out. I'll meet with anybody that wants to meet with me. I've met with citizens when council members have said, don't meet with that particular person. So we want to hear from the public. I contend, though, that the people that you're looking at on Facebook do not represent the total city at all. It's like people making post after an article that appears in the newspaper online. Is that a true representation, those 48 people who make a comment, of everybody that's read that article? Probably not. And I would contend that whatever you're reading on Facebook, and I have not read it on Facebook today, is not a full representation of the sentiments of the city. You have an asset. This really is an asset. And I would disagree that it's wrong to sit on our hands and wait until we have a plan. The plan was there. Use the fields. Use the fields.
Go ahead.
And
If I understood you correctly, you're saying to task the Parks and Rec people to come up with a plan for that engagement. Is
that's correct.
that's what you're saying?
That's absolutely correct.
Because they're the ones that are empowered to come up with a plan.
Yeah.
What's the timetable for that?
I would say that we start as soon as possible. I would take that message to the Parks and Recreation Commission for you. And we're talking about, Kenny, big things.
Why
We're not
haven't
talking-
we engaged them already?
Are you going to wait until you have a plan to use the facility? That
You
doesn't
need
make
them part of the development piece. You got to get buy-in. You need all of these people
think
at the
we're-
front end so they all feel like they have ownership in it. That's how you get buy-in, not we've already started doing something and now we want to convene them and do all that. I'm just telling you, John, we're losing the social media war, and I don't care where they're from. If we're ticking off 5 or 6 groups of people in different parts of the city, it's not going to help.
I hear you, Mayor.
Okay.
But I think we're talking past each other.
Okay.
And let me try one more time. And that is, there needs to be a grand plan. Okay, there's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of opportunity. You could do a splash park. You could do a high ropes park. You could do a rock wall. Those things are not going to happen overnight. Once there's buy-in from everybody, those things have got to get into the capital improvements program. They got to get into the process of being funded. And we're going to wait and not use the facility until we have that plan? That doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all.
But bringing all them people together and saying just what you just said would have meant a world of difference. We're going to open up the fields because we got an immediate need right now for the fields. We're going to then go into phase 2 of this. These people feel like they've been left out because we made a decision already without them.
No, we
Okay.
have made no decisions, Kenny, at all. We have made a
There's a lot of people online that kind of feel left out today. How soon do you think the Parks and Rec people can get back with us? And I think that plan needs to have buy-in from council, to the
absolutely.
mayor's point.
I would see a process that would take several months to do. And remember where we were. We talked about the fact, once we had a negotiated price and you agreed on the price, the next step was to move us to closing. And in that process was to do the environmental assessment. We decided not to buy it as is because the property was surrounded by industrial uses. It was important to make sure that there was no contamination on that site. And so let's say that there was. Let's say that there was some type of flume of underground contaminants that had migrated from south to north. Would we have still bought that property? No. I would have recommended that you not buy it. Because once you buy the property, you're responsible for all the environmental problems with that property. So we had a fair amount of due diligence to take place, and we were still doing that days before we went to closing. Does it make sense to activate this and get everybody's expectations when there's a possibility that you may not go to closing? What was around the property were industrial uses that nobody remembers. A company that made brake shoes for railroads.
Sure did. I can tell you about that.
You know, the stuff that they use were metals that contaminate the soil and migrate with groundwater.
Okay.
I would contend that you did the prudent thing, you did the right thing
Yes, sir.
in doing your due diligence.
John, you mentioned something I said one time about the planning commission. You know, when I chaired the planning commission and we did the 2020 plan and all that, we had a group of citizens, you know, that worked the part of the plan. We got together, and we stayed at the planning commission. Of course, we were responsible for it, but they were part of it. We met with them, and that made sure we had the planning commission plus a citizen group. Are you envisioning something? Can we do something like that? Is that what you're envisioning here?
Yes, sir.
And that way we can still have the citizens. We won't dismiss the Park and Rec Commission because that's their charge, but still have a citizen group that works with them along. Okay.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay.
You
So-
you said it in better words than me.
That can work, Mayor. And
We need to get them together.
we need to get that done.
There are kids over there playing and nobody knows why they're playing,
Okay.
except the people that allowed them to come play.
Yeah.
So you got a whole bunch of people going, look, it's open and there are kids playing.
Okay.
Okay?
I got
How would you feel?
I
You see
got
what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
All right?
I got you.
Yes, Bill.
So they're gonna charge them.
When we purchased the property, there was also discussion that some of that property has commercial value. And in fact, it was said that
May have.
the potential sale of that could offset some of the purchase price. Has that changed?
In my thinking, it has, because I think to develop any portion of it for commercial is going to be a challenge. On the west boundary with Frederick, you have the railroad. The most logical piece would be at the intersection of Portsmouth Boulevard and Frederick, and even it's not like an ideal retail or commercial corner because of the railroad that's there. I would first, before you encumber the property with any other use, look at your parks and recreation uses first and see how far you can go with that.
So how soon are we talking about getting this started?
But if you agree, we'll notify them tomorrow. Okay? Got it.
Yes, ma'am. Hold it, Ms. Randall.
My concern is, I've been around long enough to have seen many processes in trying to do diligence for the citizens in developing areas. And it's been my experience to take time to really pull all the pieces together, to really look at what the total impact will have on the areas that are going to be utilizing that spot, so it is totally inclusive for the communities. And I'm talking about the Portsmouth family.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm very much concerned about that, because that was one of the most difficult roles, was drawing the lines for bringing the communities together. And that was my job. I did it, and I had back-to-back heart attacks and open heart surgery. But by the same token, it was done with the peoples in mind. And we were thought of as a Portsmouth family. I think we need to bear that in mind. We may represent different communities, but we are the Portsmouth family. And if we can't think as a board of the total consequences on what impact it's going to have, not just on what's going to happen in Craddock or in Cavalier Manor, and I'm talking about all of our citizens, then we are missing the boat as officials sitting around this table. We need to make sure that we cover all bases and look in terms of what the impact is going to be for not only the generation that's here now, but the generation that's going to follow, and utilize that space and make sure we make the best decisions. It's not about what's for me, my, or those around me. It's for the citizens. They are the consumers, and they are the future for the city, whether we want to recognize it or not. And I think we need to keep that in mind. It's not me, mine, I. It's us, we, and our.
I agree.
And I think we need to keep that in our minds.
Dr. Edmonds.
I'd just like to add to ditto what Vice Mayor Cherry had said. I think there ought to be some kind of touching and some kind of engagement with some of the folk from the different civic leagues around to make sure that they feel like they are a part of it.
That's right.
Well, that's what I'm saying, a letter or something, and having a first meeting before we did
Get their
this, to make
input.
sure they had that, would probably went a lot further than where we are now. We're gonna be playing catch-up. And so we're gonna have to fix that.
Go behind us.
Okay, all right, that's it. Yes, sir, next.
Council liaison reports. The PPIC met this morning, and I'll give that report if that's okay. They considered your resolution they considered a resolution accepting the Burton's Point property, the property that's owned by the city and by the school school board. Randy Sturgeon was there from EPA. He gave a very detailed briefing, and they adopted the resolution, and so we're now on the way to have that property under the ownership of PPIC.
Okay.
Good outcome.
Anything else? Okay, just as a note, the Vice President will be here tomorrow at Norfolk International Terminal talking about infrastructure and some other things. I think he's scheduled to speak around noontime.
12 noon.
All right, there's a motion to go into closed session. Somebody want to take us in? Yes, ma'am.
Take us in.
I move to go into a closed meeting pursuant to the provision of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711 for the following purpose: discussion concerning the disposition of publicly held real property in Suffolk, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the city's bargaining position as permitted under subsection A-3, and consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff pertaining to two matters of actual or probable litigation involving the Fair Labor Standards Act and an environmental issue, where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the city's negotiating posture as permitted under subsection A-7.
Second.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Cherry?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Absent. Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Randall?
Yes.
Mayor Wright?
Yes.
We are enclosed. Thank you.
Good deal.